5 interconnected presentations for you today, starting off with high school youth, talking about their civic engagement and civic action research, and then moving on to a teacher's perspective on civic action research. Then we move into school district leaders' perspective, and then a overview of the Civically Engaged Districts project that is bringing this initiative statewide in New Jersey. And then finally, I'll share a little bit of theorization about civic ecosystems that I have drawn from this work. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to the young people and get started.
Our first project will be called Advocating for Air Conditioning. This project was completed. This project was completed in a politics and law class in Playful High School, taught by Mr. Chimbino. Good afternoon, my name is Christopher Cook. I'm a senior at Playful High School. I'm currently a team captain for my field team, and also part of STEM Academy.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Wendy Kellefak. I am a junior at Plainfield High School, New Jersey. I was born and raised in Cameroon, Africa, and came here when I was 6, and I'm also part of the STEM Academy. So the first few days of September is always the hardest on students and staff, dealing with waking up early and the hectic schedule. But to add on to our frustration, imagine walking into your classroom and it's really hot. Like, all your classrooms are hot. And it just adds on to your frustration, makes you aggravated. It's so bad. I'm speaking from my own personal, But this is why we wanted to do a research project advocating for air conditioning in every classroom.
We want to advocate for air conditioning in all classes in this district and the state. It would be appreciative if some legislation or law would basically pass and ensure that air conditioning can be put in or installed throughout the state. Our research question was, what are the student views on the lack of air conditioning and effects on academic achievements? Well, to get these basically survey questions, our question was, what we want to do was, we want to prioritize the environment and the effects on the environment and how it affects student achievements.
So to get the research project started, we distributed a Google Form survey to 1,000 students from Plainfield High School, ranging from grades 9 to 12. And the survey was written in both English and in Spanish. And it was given out to almost half of our student population. So roughly about 80% of the students surveyed responded in similar fashion, expressing their frustration with the lack of air conditioning and how it affected their emotion as well as their academic achievements and development. Have you ever been in a really hot classroom and every 5-10 minutes you're looking at the clock waiting to get out of your classroom? Because that's exactly how Plainfield High School students feel every day when it's hot. It's so frustrating, it really is. And students went as far as emphasizing, and I quote, "It is impossible to concentrate in a class when it feels like a sauna. The lack of air conditioning is a major distraction." Another student shared, "I can't focus on the lesson when all I can think about is how much I wish there was a breeze in this classroom." Another student went as far as to say, "I dread going to school on hot days. The lack of AC makes it an uphill battle to stay engaged in our studies." We can see how this emotionally affects students, to a point that they don't even want to come to school when it's hot. I can speak because the first few days of September, it was really hot. I even got heat exhaustion when I came back from school. It's really bad. And it's a problem that needs to be addressed. So the results from the survey, it basically confirmed that students felt that the lack of AC affected their moods as well as their performance in school and behavior. So we thought that it was only Plainfield High School students that were facing this problem. So we reached out to representatives from other schools in the district and in the county. And we found that it wasn't just us. Majority of them didn't have AC in their classrooms either. So So the action steps that we took into this research project was first asking district officials what the cost would be like to get AC in every classroom. We also met up with the director of buildings and grounds and asked him on his point of view and why there was no air conditioning and how the district was moving forward and providing air conditioning. We also wrote the district leadership letters. This includes the superintendent, the Board of Education members, and also the principal's vice president of the Board of Education. To further our research, we are in the process for advocating for air conditioning in all states. And in the next clip, you're going to hear from the interview from the director of buildings and grounds.
We've gotten $5.5 million so far this year in funding to upgrade our univents. So what we're going to do, the design that we're working with the engineer and the architectural firm is it will have heating and cooling in the classrooms. So that'll be a game changer across the district. So over the next 5 years, that'll be a part of the process. So $5.5 million is the start. And the first two schools will, surprisingly enough, will be the two middle schools, Maxon and Hubbard, will be the first two.
So thank you guys for having us and listening to our problem, and hopefully you guys can help us to fix this problem. And the school district is also helping us. And as you heard, the next 5 years, the middle schools will have air conditioning, hopefully. So the next presentation will be from Miranda. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I am addressing bullying in schools. Although my peers are from the Plainfield High School, I attend the Plainfield Academy for the Arts and Advanced Studies. This project was done under one of my favorite teachers, Mr. Caffrey. Okay. My name is Miranda Chavez Velasquez. I'm a first-generation Mexican daughter. I am in the National Honor Society, as well as I am the co-president of the National Honor Society for Dance Arts as a junior. Okay. I did do this project with one of my school classmates to give her credit, but she couldn't make it to this conference. Okay. Our goal was to understand and bring awareness to the constant issue of bullying. Our research question was, how severe are the effects of bullying on the psychological health of teenagers, and are those effects being talked about enough? Some demographics of the participants. We had a total of 125 students participate. We have a small school. The grades range from 9 through 12, and participating schools was PAUSE, and the research and survey was done in English. Here you see about 10 survey questions, if you want to take a moment to read them. When we were making these questions, we had about 20 and more, but when it came time to actually narrow them down, we chose questions that, even if they were just simple yes or no questions or very, very simple multiple choice questions, they could give us a double understanding of what students were feeling. When we asked participants what area in the school is the most susceptible to bullying, hallways had the most votes with 31.3%. However, when you look at the first graph on the left, you could see that the percentages were really close by. That question told us that bullying was really happening everywhere. When we asked participants how often they experience bullying on a daily, 24.1% of participants said that they experience bullying daily on 1 to 3 occasions. From those two questions alone, we made an educated assumption that bullying was happening at any time and anywhere. When asked about having to report a bullying incident, 71% of participants answered no. Why wouldn't students want to report a traumatic incident? Well, we thought that with the lack of trust with their guidance counselors and teachers, or really any adult that could help them, they didn't trust them. They didn't think that their situation was important enough or wouldn't be taken seriously. When we asked, does your school effectively address bullying? 64.7% participants answered no. That response reinforced our idea that I just mentioned, that students felt like even if they did reach out, their problem would not be solved. After our research, we found that 64.2% of participants agreed that schools do not effectively solve bullying. Admin, counselors, and teachers need to listen to students and their feelings and actually understand the core problem instead of just following the protocol that New Jersey gives you. Our action steps: present our research to school body, share our research district-wide, share our data with our principal, central office, and superintendent, which I did last year, and create a PSA about combating bullying, which you will see right now. I picked bullying for my white part topic because I see it a lot in my school, and it's not really something that is being solved or trying to make a move to help it. So I thought by actually doing research within my school, I was able to understand more why bullying was happening and what we could do to help it.
We assigned it, and the next day she came in with the federal law about bullying, and she had already spent time highlighting and annotating and pointing out to me exactly where she was going to be focusing her attention.
This concludes my white part research project. Thank you.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
This is my project. Let me give you a little introduction. So, students are more than just students. Students like myself and many of you go through a lot.
Use the microphone.
Oh, I think I'm loud. Go through a lot in and out the classroom. So this is why we decided to name our project, Creating Safe Spaces for Students. A project at Plainfield High School, my school, at the Law and Politics class taught by Mr. Shimbina. Hi everyone, my name is Jocelyn Calderon. I'm currently a Plainfield High School senior, currently looking to major in marketing/business in the fall semester at Rutgers University. It's nice to meet you all. So our goal for this project is to equip teachers and with strategies necessary to support students who have experienced adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACEs. With this, it also goes in through like your trauma and anything you've gone through outside the classroom. Everything counts for this project. So we just wanted to see how teachers can create a supportive environment for all students to foster positive outcomes outside the classroom and inside the classroom. So our research question, how do teachers meet the social and emotional needs of students who might have experienced ACEs? So originally we wanted to do a Google Doc with yes or no questions, but we decided that an interview was a little more personal and we could get a little more details within the interview. So overall, we had 7 participants, teachers, a little bit of district administrators. We had bilingual to support our bilingual community as well, and of Latinx, Caucasian, and African American descent, all of which are from Plainfield Public School District. So as you can see here, you can take time to read some of them. But here are our interview questions. We asked our peers, we asked our staff, I asked the principal to see what interview questions were the most effective, and you could take time and read them right here. So out of all of those participants, these 4 stood out to me, and they all answered the question of how do you create a safe haven in your classroom for your students? So I'm gonna read some of them. So to your right, I have all my students write me a letter at the beginning of the year, tell me about themselves, and I respond to each letter. And I can attest to this since I was in his class, so I know for sure he responds to each letter. It was an assignment, and he actually responded back, which is surprising. But it made me feel like he knew a little bit about my story, because I shared some personal stuff since the assignment was personal. And I knew a little bit about his, so it made me feel a little more connected to the teacher. To your left, we have, quote, I do whatever I can to make my students feel as comfortable as possible in my classroom. You can tell she really does that with all the silly drawings in the back. You know, her students are in and out her classroom. Above, we have, quote, focus on the 4 S's of childhood attachment: to be seen, safe, soothed, and secure. And like I said before, the ultimate goal of this project was to educate teachers on this. So we were going around asking teachers and telling them, like the interview question said before. And it was nice to see somebody who already knows what we're talking about. So it was nice to see. And below we have, quote, constantly doing temperature checks with my students to see how they're feeling and how I can adjust my activities. So for any researchers that are in the audience, I'm sure you know there's limitations to any type of research. And I'm sure it's frustrating. It was frustrating to me too. I was like, dang. But anyhow, we originally wanted to survey all the students, like from the whole school and even beyond that, but let's stick with my school first, all right? So anyway, yeah, we wanted to survey them, but unfortunately, due to the questions we were asking, they were personal. It was about adverse childhood experiences, so stuff that you've gone through outside the classroom. It was personal, and we didn't want to put anybody on the spot like that. The most important thing is that it's kind of illegal. Like, teachers and staff have to report that, and like I said before, we did not want to put anybody on blast. We did not want to put anybody in the spotlight that they didn't feel comfortable. So that was a limitation. However, if any of you in the audience want to further this research, we would suggest connecting with student services to see what services are offered and how they can be distributed to students. I recommend social media. Social media is great. All the kids are on there. But I say this for all of you, but we actually further our own research here. So for our action steps, we spread awareness for ACEs across the 2 high schools that we have, so my school and Pause, and we went to a couple of elementary schools too. We wrote a letter to district leadership, so our principal, we have 4 vice principals, so all of them got a letter. We spread awareness through student body. Like I said before, I was going around asking students and asking teachers what questions or like what they wanted to include in this project too, because it's everybody. And we shared our PSA with staff at a back-to-school professional development, so we voiced this exact project and voiced our opinions. And the biggest outcome to come out of this project, it should be titled Action Leap Action, because this was an action leap. We created a community district event for students like you and families like yours to provide resources for people experiencing ACEs. And I am so proud of this. It's the student showcase we had this April, actually. You can see to your upper right, you can see the YMCA there. So it was a big deal that they were there because, you know, they provide resources, a lot of great things. And they also, with ACEs too, they provide resources for people struggling with mental health or any sort of abuse going on. So it was great that they were there. I'm so happy, I'm sorry. At the bottom we have robots created by our students from our STEM Academy. At the bottom we have students having fun. Like, you know, I didn't want it to be boring, so instead of like paper and pencil and telling me, oh, this is important, we made it engaging toward the community, and it was great. And to your left, we have our Youth Advisory Council board, which Ms. Linda will talk about in a minute. At the bottom, we have at least 500 people showed up, so this was a big deal, and running the event was so chaotic, it made my brain hurt, but I loved it. Like I said, I want to do marketing, so this was a perfect opportunity for me. So, and for the ACEs, we've had our resources in the upper corner. I'm still upset the photographer didn't take a picture of it, like I told him, but I'm so mad. Anyhow, at the bottom you have some kids engaging. We had to put a little bit of fun for the kids because, you know, they're kids. Nobody wants to go in. They're like, oh, listen to the presentations. They get bored. So anyway, this is our student showcase. I'm super proud. Thank you for listening to my project and listening to me rant about some of the stuff going on in the project. Thank you.
I know it's tough to fill that shoes to follow that. Thanks, Jocelyn. So as Jocelyn said, we, as a teacher, I get to advise these guys. It's great. They take their vision, their passion into starting with just STEM and building it into ACEs and finding out about bullying and how they can incorporate their vision and include it into the community and schools and almost make it a giant family like atmosphere. So we created the Youth Advisory Council. When they started, they were just basically, hey, let's just get together. And this was 3 years ago. So some of them were freshmen, some of them were sophomores. And so they came together as a youth group, and then said, hey, I want to do stuff to do for my community as well as my school. So with finding out about ACEs, they've also incorporated how they can get teachers in. They did a little thing for new teachers training, and they are just, this is just their beginning. So they are a great group. They've figured out how they can empower the world, empower the students. That was not me. Sorry. And these are just some of the few people that started. There are a few more that did not get to fit into the picture. But RJ is going to speak a little bit about the empowerment that Youth Advisory Council has on him and everybody else.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Romario Tomlinson. I am a senior here at Plainfield High School. I consider myself to be shy by nature, but by completing this Wi-Fi project and working with the Youth Advisory Council, I have grown in many ways by bringing change to the Plainfield Public Schools. And also I want to bring the teachers up.
project's fantastic. Alrighty, so I am Brandy Gustafson. I'm a middle school teacher over in New Brunswick Public Schools. I work in New Brunswick Middle School, and that's in New Jersey.
I'm Renee Roundy. I'm currently a doctoral student. Been working on the Civically Engaged Districts project for the last couple of years, and I'm a former middle school teacher.
So throughout the student process, the teachers are on the sidelines. This is a student-led project, but we are there. So we are going to talk to you today about some of the experiences we had and what our roles look like in a student-led project.
So this is our civic action research cycle. We use this a lot for a lot of things. And so I just wanted to walk you through it really quickly. So to start would be building community. Oh, you're right. Maybe. Where's the green circle? Thanks. Oh, okay. So this is building community. So this is where we're kind of starting with like icebreakers and really actually creating a community for us to like investigate a problem. Then we select a concern to investigate, collect data, analyze data, and then communicate results and act. So you should have seen like all of these steps through the projects that were just discussed. What we're gonna talk about today is a project that both Brandy and I worked on with a group of middle schoolers on uniforms. So for example, after collecting data from both school and home communities on the uniform policy, students then analyzed the data and presented to 3 levels of school administration before ultimately winning a relaxed uniform policy for an additional year after their presentation. So that's what we're gonna walk you through today.
Okay, so the first step in the process is building community. This is really your key to success. So we learned that through like consistent community building icebreakers that we could make students feel comfortable expressing themselves and to participate authentically in the task at hand. It also prepares students for public speaking as they have to keep speaking out to audiences over and over again, even though they're smaller communities. Makes it easier when they have to get in front of 200 people and present to them, which most of our students do.
So in selecting an issue to investigate, we go in, as educators with ideas of what would make a good topic. But we learned that the most meaningful topics are the ones that students choose. So in the case of the school dress code, initially what appeared to be a small superficial topic turned out to be a much deeper topic that addressed racism and classism in the schools. So getting to the larger topics that teachers might find themselves immediately more concerned with will also come with time.
Okay, so the next step is collecting data. And where does the teacher fit into student-led research when collecting data? So a lot of times you become the expert too. So every project my students have worked on, I've learned so much more from. While we were working on the uniforms, I was assisting a few students while they did their research and using like the Google search engine and just kind of helping them figure out which of these sources were valid. And we came across a lot of really interesting information. And in doing this, this is where we started to see that our topic was much bigger than just being comfortable in what kids wore to school. And this is where socioeconomic status and even issues of racism started coming up in our research data. So by doing this data with the students, then Renee and I could anticipate the deeper conversations we were gonna have the following week and the week after once our research group started to present. Another role you have is, or that we had, was connecting allies outside of the classroom. In this case, we connected with the supervisors, and I'll talk about that in a minute. In another project, we looked at gun violence a couple of years ago, and we connected with Moms Demand Action and Students Demand Action. And in both cases, whether the supervisors or these other organizations, we take the issue outside of just the classroom, and it makes it a bigger issue for students. They get to see that they're not the only people involved in this, and it gets them connected in bigger ways. Their projects become so much bigger than just this little tiny sphere. So the next step is analyzing data, and one of the biggest difficulties I think a lot of teachers have, myself especially, is backing away and letting the students just do it. So in the case of the parent survey, we interviewed teachers, students, parents, and the parent survey was in Spanish, and everything went out translated English and Spanish, but we forgot to translate the parents' results. So as we go to look at it as a group, I'm kind of looking at it like, and in the end, a couple of students were like, nope, we got this, miss, and they just took right over. I sat down at a desk like any other student, and my students led the program. And it made me kind of realize that we need to let our students show us what they're capable of. And this was one of those times where they just, no, we got this. This is our project. And they get to take that ownership and really advocate for themselves.
So through translating the results, we also were able to identify allies. So we were all surprised to find that teachers were our biggest allies, especially students, and that uniforms have largely been fought and advocated for by their parents. So by letting the data speak for itself, we all move forward to understand why our allies were teachers and then also how to reach parents. So this was a great jumping off point for students to then take action.
Alrighty, so the final step is communicating results and then acting upon those results. So our students did 3 presentations. We started with the supervisors of humanities so that they could help the students learn how to speak like administration talk. And one of the things they had us do was actually very clever, so we're sharing that with you. Our district vision is to prepare, empower, and inspire lifelong leaders and learners. So as you can see, students then took our vision and they put in how they felt inspired or didn't feel inspired. For example, we feel empowered because we can discuss this problem with you. So they kind of put that district language to the test, and that was really powerful and also very fun to watch. The next presentation was to the stakeholder, which was our superintendent as well as the school principal. And the superintendent really was one of our allies. I kind of knew that all along. Our final presentation, he then sent us to go present, our students to present to the school board. And we had less than a week to prepare, and the students went up. And it wasn't until the students started to speak that I realized, all along I've been protecting the students. We have protected them and their project. The supervisors supported them and wanted their project to grow. The superintendent was their ally and really also wanted to support them. The Board of Ed, not so much. This was their policy. So this was actually the first time our students were challenged. And everything they said came back to them in some way, and they had to defend it, and over again. And Renee and I watched, and we're kind of like, oh, you know, we felt so bad. But in the end, the kids felt fantastic. And once it was over, they were like, that was amazing. We did such a good job. So we were really happy for them, and we realized that it wasn't until they were actually challenged that they really felt like they were truly being heard, and that they finally had their moment. The other thing we get a lot is what happens if we fail? And that's if we don't get what we want. In this case, we did not get a change in the uniform. We did get another year of like a lax enforcement of the school uniform, but they didn't make any of the recommended changes. And what happens is that students feel very empowered. They became advocates for themselves, and they start off thinking nobody's gonna listen to them. They're used to not being listened to by adults, so they didn't really expect much anyways. So when they get to present to people, and they get to be in the room and have conversations with people they never get to speak to, they find that very empowering, and they're very happy to start this work. And it doesn't become something where they think, all right, we didn't win. It becomes, let's do this again. And many of the students come back year after year to continue, whether it's the same project or to work on something different. They're very proud of the work that they've done and the role that they've played.
So, as teachers, we are facilitating and adapting to young people's exploration of their topic more than anything else in this project. So this helps us to decenter our own power and authority in the classroom to make young people the authority, as was kind of demonstrated through something like taking ownership of translating, right? This also means that our relationship with administration really matters. So these changes are more sustainable when an administrator is willing to engage young people as change makers on larger district or school-wide scales. So this is something that 2 of our lovely administrators are going to walk us through now.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
My name is Marnie McCoy. I am Professor of Educational Leadership at Kane University, and I had an opportunity to serve as one of the district level administrators. I was one of the assistant superintendents in New Brunswick, there you are, I'm pointing over there. You're right there. In New Brunswick when Brandy and Renee were doing their work. And I am very happy to be joined by my colleague.
Hello everyone, my name is Tristan Cox. I currently serve as the K-12 Social Studies Supervisor in the Plainfield Public Schools. I have an interesting relationship with Dr. Rubin, being that I attended the graduate school of education at Rutgers, and I was a part of the original cohort that was implementing YPAR and Youth in Action research, and we actually created a program in the Rutgers GSC geared towards training future teachers, who wanted to work specifically in urban education. And we, one of the tenets of that program was action research for youth.
So you've heard a lot about advocacy, about change, about shifting, about voice and agency. And so much of that work is rooted and grounded in change and change theory. And so as we consider the work of Kurt Lewin, and we think about the 3 stages of change theory and managing change, there are 3 stages to that. So it's the unfreezing, the moving, and the freezing. So the unfreezing you've heard about from our students and from my colleagues is when we take a look and say, there's something we've got to look at here. Let's examine that a little more closely. What's going on? What does the research say? How can we implement some change? And then we get to the moving stage, where we actually do just that. We move it. We implement to the greatest extent possible. And then the final stage of refreezing, where we say, well, this was really good work, but how do we sustain it? How do we institutionalize it? How do we ensure that it wasn't just a moment, but that it truly is a movement that is going to last over time? Now, the reason that that's so important, and you heard a little bit about this from Brandy and Renee, is because we know change has emotion attached to it. And so as the district level administrators, part of our job was to make sure that the emotion of the change did not distract from the change itself. So Tristan is going to talk a little bit about how that looks in terms of an ecosystem.
So if you could do me a favor and just take a look at the diagram, and what it represents is an ecosystems approach to civic learning and engagement. And if you look at the center, you have the Civic Action Research Project. And then you look at what sprawls out, you have all of the people that are involved in that process. You have the teachers who help the students through the process. You have the district leaders, the other school leaders, the peers, the youth in other schools, the community members, and the family members. And it's important to note that with this type of work, it doesn't just stop with a YPAR project and then students doing a presentation. Usually that work transforms the students, their identity, and it has a rippling effect through the school community. You see that with the kids and the work that they've done, namely the student showcase. And for me, in the last presentation, one of the things that's really powerful for me to see in students is not the end product, like what they changed. Like, okay, they may have gotten air conditioning somewhere, or they may have, created a policy for bullying. That's great. But for me, the more powerful thing is seeing the transformation of who they are as individuals and becoming change agents. And that's the ripple effect that we want to highlight when we talk about this work.
So as we consider more specifically the roles of Tristan, for example, as supervisor, my role as assistant superintendent, what exactly is the role? So the students were encouragers to one another, resources to one another. They had their teachers to be encouragement and resource. And we are encouragement, support, and resource for the teachers. So really in 3 main ways. 1, to connect and to advocate. 2, to coach. And 3, to guard the process. So in terms of connecting and advocating, you think of the school level, where you heard a lot of our presentations come from, but then there's district level work that also goes along with that. So it's a lot of meetings before the meetings. You all know how that works. We have a meeting tomorrow at 2 o'clock, look at the agenda. Who do I need to meet with before the meeting? So we were a lot of the meetings before the meetings people, whether on the school level or whether on the district level, meeting with our peers to say heads up, representing the project and the students in rooms that they really did not have access to at the time. So they were contingent, their moving forward was really contingent upon our making sure we did our job behind the scenes. And you heard Brandy and Renee talk about their work with the supervisor. So that's very much the role that we play. And then the external community. So you heard our students talk about their work with the Y and having them present at their student, the showcase. So it was really important for someone to be able to make those connections and to advocate for them in that regard. The second is the coaching. So we're talking about strategy, we're talking about the content of the presentation and the presentation itself. So we understand what we're asking, we understand the problem it is that we're trying to address. What is the strategy to best articulate that to the people who are in the room? So that is the job of the coaches, right? Secondly, the content of the presentation. So we know the business administrator is going to be in the room. He's interested in numbers. We know the director of facilities is going to be in the room. He's interested in how that's going to set the whole plan for the district, not just one school. So really having that conversation with our students to help them understand that through their teachers who are working with them. And finally, the presentation itself. At the end of the day, what's going to be visually stimulating, what's going to connect with people. And I will tell you, because I was in New Brunswick, and in New Brunswick, the vision statement is everything. So if you open your mouth and it's not connected to the vision, sit down. They don't want to hear you. They don't want to hear you. And so for them to zone in on that was a very, very big deal. The last step is to be the guardian of the process. And again, how do we know what success is? Very, very important. How are we defining success and how we are measuring success? Because we say to the kids, what's your ask? What is it that you are asking for? What do you want to see happen as a result of this? But what if it doesn't? Have they failed because they didn't get what they asked for? Well, we've heard no. It was still a win because you have RJ who got up here and said, I feel good about talking in front of people. I feel good about navigating relationships, and I didn't always feel that before. And then last but not least, and then Tristan, why am I calling you Christian today? I don't know why I'm doing that. I've only had coffee and water. He's gonna talk a little more deeply about this, but really making sure that it is a learning process and it's not just about we didn't get the outcome that we wanted. So, Tristan.
So I want to speak a little bit about my role as a social studies supervisor and how I have, positioned myself in each one of these facets with the students and with this work. So as a connector and an advocate, I'm going to talk briefly about, we had our first, during the pandemic, kind of digital showcase where students presented youth in action research projects, and before the event, we brainstormed who needed to be involved. So it wasn't just at the school level. We actually had the mayor on the call, we had city council members, we had board of education members, the superintendent. We pretty much had everyone on the call, and Beth was actually our guest speaker that evening. So in terms of that, that's how I've always played a role of like, how can I connect the kids and who do they need to be connected with so that they can advocate for the change that they want to see in their school. And then in terms of coaching, our kids. How many times have you all seen me in the past, 2 weeks? We worked on their PowerPoint, right? We made it, congruent. We made it look aesthetically pleasing. We put all of the points together and in order. And there was conversation about how do you send an eloquent message? You know, how are you concise? So all of those things are layered in the coaching process. And next, in terms of being the guardian of the process, a few things. First, from a curricular level, right? In New Jersey, we have the Laurel Wooten Act that was passed, I believe, 2 years ago. And that mandates that we teach civics in 8th grade. So from a curriculum standpoint, I need to ensure that this is happening with fidelity with my staff. But also I see myself in the guardian of the process is creating an avenue for students to consistently be able to share and advocate their voice, and we do that through our student showcase. Youth in Action Research is a mainstay in our showcase, so whoever attends, they will see projects where students are advocating for change, right? And that, the kids, you know, may not have said this, but the showcase is our premier academic event. You know, people often come out for sporting events and things of that nature. The student showcase is well known. We're in year 3, where, you know, it's gonna be very positive and powerful for our district. And then lastly, just always consistently positioning, you know, the change agents with district personnel. So before I begin speaking, if you all could just do me a favor and navigate these photos for a second. I want to kind of speak a little bit more to the work that they've done. So if you look at this first photo, top center, approximately 3 years ago, we created a civics committee. And that civics committee was comprised of myself at the district level, a teacher, and then 2 community members that are involved with an organization known as the League of Women Voters. And our goal, or our vision, was how can we, you know, engage our school districts civically? Like, what do we need to do to create civic engagement in our district? The first thing we did was we need something curriculum based. Like, what are we gonna do in all the grades? And the first thing that came to my mind, because of the work that I had done with Dr. Rubin, was YPAR. So we implemented YPAR, and then we thought, okay, well, what is the next thing we need to do? What is the next thing we need to do? And you see, it kind of starts to work around. I wanna point to a picture, these 2 photos right here. We've also, for the past 2 years, been hosting voter registration drives with students who are 17 years of age or older, And last year we did, for the first time, our voting simulation event, where we partnered with our county, and they actually brought voting machines in. We created ballots and made the questions engaging for the students, like, you know, who is the most popular in the school, or who is the most valuable athlete, I think is the question that we asked last year. And we wanted to really think about, like, you know, creating stuff that was powerful to really engage the student body. And we did that, and it was a popular event, and everyone was happy with it. And we also had our students present at the Transforming Education Conference at Montclair State University. Miranda, it's tough to see, but Miranda presented at the YPAR conference last year at Rutgers University. Here, you see members of the Youth Advisory Council, RJ and Chris, and Helen, she graduated, she attends Montclair now. This was a student showcase planning meeting, and they actually addressed the administrative staff. So they addressed the superintendent, assistant superintendent, all the principals, vice principals in the district. And they're basically telling them the work that they're going to do for the student showcase. In the photo in the bottom right is another one of our partnerships that we've created, an organization called Civics Trust. And if you look at the top left, you see Wendy. She actually is in a photo with our current superintendent. And one of the things that the Youth Advisory Council did was advise the superintendent on the student experience and advise him on things that needed to be changed. So as you can see, just by starting with the YPAR project, you see the rippling effect in the community, in the school community, and you see the rippling positive effect in the students and the agents of change. Thank you.
everyone. My name is Chloe Bellows, and I am a PhD candidate in the language education program at Rutgers. I am not a social studies teacher. I'm an ESL and bilingual teacher, which is exciting for me to be a part of this project because my work looks at civic engagement and education and political organizing of undocumented immigrants at community organizations. And so a big part of the Civically Engaged Districts project is that civics is not limited to social studies or one classroom in a high school. And so I'm excited to bring my background to this work in this team.
I'm Renee again, hi.
So we're gonna start out by giving you, Renee and I are gonna talk about our professional development series, a year-long program in New Jersey to bring more teachers into this work and to offer sessions and guide them throughout the year. So this is a little bit of our roadmap for the first year, which was 2022-2023. In the summer, we met as a team from the university at Rutgers to plan and brainstorm, what is this going to look like? How will we create this? Who do we recruit, etc. We held 2 professional development days in October and in February. And in the meantime, in between those, we held monthly meetings for our educators who were across New Jersey with mentors, who you've heard from Tristan, Brandy, and Marnie, 3 of our mentor educators, monthly meetings with the cohort. And then culminating was in April, our Youth in Action Day, where students from the schools working with teachers came in and showed their presentations and their research that they had done throughout the year. Summer comes and we regroup and revise, and now we're in year 2. So when we got together in that first summer with Dr. Rubin and our team from Rutgers, we thought about, what does this work look like, and what do we envision for a project like this for professional development and bringing in teachers from across the state. So we thought a lot about who to involve, right? We've heard from mentors, from people from the university, researchers, we are grad students, people from the district, right? Teachers, of course. And we really wanted to think about how we can help teachers create sustainable relationships with one another and across districts, and how to make these professional development experiences meaningful, hands-on, and really reflective of the true nature of civic action research and all that it embodies and what you've heard from today. So here's some numbers. I'll let you look at these. From our first year of the cohort, we had teachers from across New Jersey. They, in their classrooms, were bringing this work to over 500 students. And again, I want to highlight the interdisciplinary nature of this cohort. This is not just social studies teachers, but teachers ESL, ELA, bilingual, health, world history, right, civics, and then of course the supervisors and principals who formed part of our cohort and took part in these professional developments. So our second year, which we are currently in, we have expanded. We have some returning educators, which is exciting in our cohort. We have more educators. We've added a couple of new mentors. We are reaching more districts and more schools, and more elementary too. So grades 1 through 12, right, which is exciting because this work really can be done with elementary, with the little kids. We're now working with 2 university teams at Rutgers and Teachers College.
So we began the project really with identifying mentors. We feel very strongly about our mentors, as you can tell. So folks in a variety of school positions who had previously led civic action research projects or who were administrative supports on projects. And they were also located in New Jersey and had continued to support civic action research. And they really then helped us to develop what the professional development actually looked like. We all worked really as a unit. So here are some pictures from our first professional development. So after connecting with mentors, we worked with them to identify kind of the important moments in the process and key learnings that would allow us to engage educators and lead implementation of civic action research projects. We really wanted it to be implementable. Like you come, you learn, and then you can go back to your classroom and do. So we did this by walking through the civic action research cycle, session by session, moving in the second session toward a more hands-on approach, and included some facilitated discourse around problem solving and engaging with the larger school community, while also facilitating youth to lead their own projects. So this is our kind of culminating day. And so a quick overview of just, what was there at the Youth in Action Forum. So 7 districts, 11 schools, elementary, middle, and high school, about 175 students. And we were across 2 different buildings, so that we could actually, make it so everyone could still pay attention, that's important. And so we did that alongside campus activities where then they kind of got to know the university community, and ended with, well, a big important moment is the dining hall, students getting to eat in the dining hall. Here are some other photos from the day of. It's a very loud, messy, fun day. It was a joy.
So along year 1, in between the first professional development day in October and the second in February, and throughout we were trying to do a lot of reflecting and sort of pivoting and adapting to what we were hearing from teachers and what the needs were. So one thing we heard from our first professional development day in October was that teachers wanted even more hands-on workshops and really doing, getting into doing this at the workshops and sessions. So we implemented that more in our second day. We thought a lot about how to create these cross-district relationships. The first day we found that teachers were really staying in their district, right, sitting at the same table. And that was great for sharing and building their relationships, but we really wanted to, we're really trying to create community of practice across the state. So we thought about how can we, mix people up and create these cross-district relationships more throughout the year. And then important throughout is really meeting teachers where they are in the process. We have teachers coming who have never heard of this before, teachers who have tried it, kind of dabbled in it, teachers who are doing these professional developments this year and say, I'm going to implement it next year, but I want to learn and do this, these PDs this year. So that's also an important part. And then year 2, where we are now, we're still adapting and reflecting along the way. We have refined and sort of changed the mentor role a little bit based on what we've heard feedback from teachers, involving now some school visits, so mentors visiting educators into their classrooms to see what the civic action research is looking like for them, how they can be supported, what the questions are. Continuing to think about this intentional cross-district community of practice and really centering participant voices, the teachers, the educators who form part of our cohort, and of course the students who are at the center of it all. We've been creating online resources, which are, we're continuously kind of uploading to our website, and we're working to create professional development resources that are really open online for people who aren't coming to our sessions or even in our state.
So kind of through all of this, similar to centering young people's authentic engagement in the civic action research process, we found that as a community working within this larger community of practice that we've had to continually recenter educators to ask what they might need to facilitate well. So we found that we come to the work in very different ways and have had to navigate the salience of current events to understand our role in civically engaging educators outside of this specific teacher practice. So we've had to discuss how to engage with educators as facilitators rather than authorities on the process. And we've yet to find complete consensus, because you probably won't. So as this project goes on, we realize we are just as much working with the civic action wheel, the civic action cycle, and all of its messiness as any other group in our community of practice. And so as we think through that, Dr. Rubin's going to come up and talk about the civic ecosystem.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
It is a joy to be presenting with this whole team. So I'm going to get a bit theoretical here because I think there's some useful theory that can be derived from this community engaged social design project. And I'm going to talk about each part of this diagram as a way of explaining the broadened theorization of civic learning that has developed through this work, and I think that the work both enacts and supports. So first, I'm going to start with this idea that civic learning is mobile and expansive. So what do I mean by that? So this approach that we've described today shows how civic learning develops untidily across layers of home, community, various classrooms, peer relationships, communication with different people across the school district, and amid networks of practice, rather than being neatly contained within discrete classroom settings. So in much of the educational research, learning has been conceptualized as taking place within the sealed container of the classroom, as Leander puts it. But in these projects, young people move across both space and role. And this movement both shapes and provides opportunity for the emergence of new social relations and new forms of learning. So we've seen students out of the classroom as data collectors, interviewing peers, talking to the head of building and grounds, sharing their work with community leaders and educators in a variety of settings, traveling to gatherings of youth researchers who are also working on civic issues. Chris Gutierrez notes that people live their lives and learn across multiple settings. And this holds true not only across the span of their lives, but also within and across the institutions and communities they inhabit. And we see that this more expansive form of civic learning is also applicable to adult participants as well, as Renee and Chloe were just explaining. And we've seen adults learning from youth inquiry, engaging in personal reflection, joining a statewide community of educators striving to center youth voice in their civic education practices. So civic learning in this work is unbound, occurring across place over time and through multiple resources and networks, mobile and expansive. So the overlapping spaces through which civic learning is constituted are also located within historical time and amid inequitable systems and structures. So just as young people's rights and experiences as citizens are fundamentally shaped by their positionality within racialized and otherwise unequal systems, so too is civic learning. So this work builds on that assumption rather than avoiding it. So in this slide, there's a few samples from civic action research projects. Counterclockwise from the upper left, we see young people grounding their, and this is the project that Renee and Brandy were talking about, young people grounding their analysis of their school's uniform policy within a larger framework, sharing the correlation between a school's uniform requirement and the socioeconomic dimensions of the community in which the school's located. And in the middle school students' own words, they say, what this means that public schools with uniforms imply that they are a high poverty area. Private schools that wear uniforms indicate that they have money, unlike public school uniforms that indicate more poverty. The next project, we see a project in which the middle school student researchers make connections between the expense and inaccessibility of period products and gender inequality. And the third image is part of research conducted by another high school group, identifying challenges faced by emergent bilingual students at their school that result in a lack of access to high quality educational opportunities. And I think this is what Kevin, Clay, and I call critically relevant civics, in which students' legitimate knowledge, interests, and concerns as citizens play a central role in curriculum design. And young people have the opportunity to examine, explain, and change the political, social, cultural, and material forces that shape inequalities in their lives, communities, and the broader world. So finally, through these projects, we also can see the affective and relational dimensions of civic learning. Emotion, feeling, and the physical self are not traditionally part of research on civic learning. But charged moments of emotion, intensity, and connection often occur in these projects. So this slide shows a school superintendent and a student group embracing after their presentation on the experiences of emergent bilingual students in the school. And I've shared some quotes from students expressing feelings, care, togetherness, love, being heard, and from an assistant superintendent, an expression of hope that also voices directly to youth their impact on her. This is, as Erin Hollick describes, a space of affective intensity, thick for learning and doing. Or as Maya Shepard notes, transformative and memorable classroom experiences are intrinsically linked to emotion and how it's expressed, navigated, facilitated, and explored. Civic learning, when connected to students' and educators' lives, hopes, and desires, can be meaningfully infused with such qualities. So to bring it all together, I'd like to offer this reconceptualization of civic learning, a more expansive understanding that I think helps us to make sense of the ways that civic learning develops across place, through affect and relation, embedded in history and structure. And I've tried to capture this situated interactive web of relations as an ecosystem, and this approach is a critical ecological approach to understanding civic learning. The terms ecosystems, ecology, ecological have been used in a variety of ways across the natural and social sciences to express complex and contextually situated systems of relationships. It's been used, of course, in educational theory, notably in the late 70s by Bronfenbrenner, to describe the complex environmental factors framing and shaping psychological development, an intervention that helped move the field of development out of individuals' heads and into relation with the world. Similarly, more recently, learning scientists Barab and Roth argue that an ecological perspective takes learning out of the realm of the individual and puts it into motion. In 2008, education policy researcher Weaver Hightower called for an ecology method for ed policy analysis because the concept, quote, accounts for all of its complexity. Civic learning is similarly complex, multidimensional, fluid, and interactive. These ecological models, however, have not traditionally attended to, as Brown and Ah put it, the ways that institutional power, social context, and history both manifest and maintain unequal power relations. And so in this framing, I want to highlight and foreground the ways that history, structure, and power shape and permeate these civic ecosystems. In this critical ecological model of civic learning, we see civic learning distributed across youth and adults, suffused with affect, developed through the movement of people into unaccustomed roles and settings, and critically attentive to historical and structural location, resembling, in some ways, the civic learning that takes place through real-world civic struggles, which are inherently mobile, affective, and structurally located. In her 2011 AERA presidential address, Chris Gutierrez called for models for educational intervention that are consequential, new systems that demand radical shifts in our views of learning and our perceptions of youth from non-dominant communities so that they can become agents of newly imagined futures. And civic learning, I think, might benefit from this sort of radical shift as well, and we really hope that our work can be part of this. So I want to just end with a QR code to our website in case you want to see more. And I want to thank all of you for coming and invite our discussant, Cynthia Salinas, to come on up. And we'll have time for discussant remarks and Q&A. Thank you.
So to a large extent, I feel so small up here in this, at this podium, thinking about the scope of what y'all have done, and the undertaking and the energy, and in particular, when I look at the young people in the room, not me, I think of the courage that it took to do all this amazing work. I think about the realization of it, and above all, I think about the hope that we have now instilled in this generation of young citizens, and their abilities to make change, to truly embrace what Gutierrez has asked us to do, is to think about education, and particularly civic learning, in much more transformative and reconceptualized ways. So I want to thank everybody who participated. I was thinking about the teachers the entire time and how much power you were willing to release. And then I think about the students and how much power they were willing to take up. Yes. And so in that power dynamic, I think it's quite fascinating to think about the way that Dr. Rubin and all have framed this as an ecological study. We don't live in a vacuum. To Dr. Rubin's exact point, We live with multiple stakeholders. To borrow from Gutierrez's work on ideas of third space, to think about Ann Haas-Dyson, she talks about the curriculum being semi-permeable, comes in and out of the school. And so our assumptions as school teachers are often is that all learning, all civic learning in particular, lives in the schools. And so what you all have done is to defy decades upon decades of, let's just call it, control. And so I just sit here, and I think everybody in the audience is incredibly honored and excited to have heard your presentations and to have witnessed this kind of work. I think all 5 projects engage in what Clay and Ruben have talked about in terms of civically relevant. You chose the topics that were important to you. We have a lot of pre-made curriculum that might have chosen it for you, but instead, it truly was from the students. It was the things that were most important to you. And ultimately, isn't that what a citizen does? It embraces the topics, the engaging, deliberations, the debates, whatever it is, but it comes exactly from the citizens. And so the idea of an ecological study that which you generated the thinking, you generated, by the way, the decisions around stakeholders also. All of that is incredibly impressive in my mind. You embrace this cycle of engagement that I think is also quite fascinating. Although I do have a certain sort of edge on this. I feel like on some level, there's this cycle of engaging as citizens that we all grew up with. And what I think happened is that you all changed that cycle, that you influence that cycle, that generations to come will not embrace some of the things that we learned in the way that we did it, but rather that your generation represents a different way of being. You're literally in this borderland, and you navigated the borderland beyond words. You were able to do exactly what it took to go talk to a school board. You wrote letters. You did everything, and I'm going to go with this, that white people do. But you did it in your way. And so that is the defiance that I see today, and why I wish to compliment this group in this particular project. It is just absolutely marvelous to think about what has happened. And that's why I think everybody in the audience is quite impressed. If I look back, I can think about things that this particular YPAR project really embraces civic action in ways that are not defined by adults, but defined by the young people in the room. And once that starts to shift away from our hands to your hands, I feel like there is hope. And I'm gonna thank the teachers, because that was a heck of a thing to wrestle out of their hands. So I just think that's pretty amazing for the teachers to have said, okay, what do you want to do? Because I became a teacher to be in charge, to be in control. And I remember reading Deborah Myers when I was young, and this idea that classrooms are democratic spaces. I was like, bullshit. Sorry. I am the queen and urchin of knowledge. And so the defiance that is sort of erupting from this, and your willingness as teachers and administrators is beyond impressive, absolutely beyond impressive. I have to also note that there is this idea of your willingness to disrupt the hierarchy of decision making. It was incredibly defiant and disruptive, but in a way that I think as civic instructors we're pretty excited about. So disruption, recognizing power, recognizing where power sits, and recognizing that you can navigate in that space in ways that are beyond my imagination was really quite impressive. I'll make one last comment, and that has to do with, I want to emphasize the willingness of everyone to come to the table, to engage in this process, and to give up space, to give up, the responsibilities that are normally charged with teachers, and to say to the next generation of young people, it's your turn. And I marvel again at the teachers. I marvel at your youth, your brilliance, your courage. Everything about this project is incredibly inspiring. And if only everybody could do it this way. If only.
Okay, great. We've got 5 minutes, so I'll just recognize people who want to speak, and feel free to make comments or ask questions of any of the presenters. Sir.
This is a question maybe for the students or the teachers or anyone. What was the hardest part of getting this started? That's, I think, as a department chair myself, other knowing other teachers who would like to do stuff like that, what was the hardest first step, or what was the toughest part about getting going?
Maybe a student, and then Tristan, and then a
Yeah,
teacher,
so when we present this process to teachers, and like I'm a mentor, so I like work with all of the different teachers around the state, it sometimes comes across as ambiguous. Like you reference, like when you're a teacher, you are in control, and like, we start the lesson like this, and we end it like this with an exit ticket. And when you get observed, if you don't have an exit ticket, you get in trouble. So it seems ambiguous, and it's rough the first time, with the structure.
Yeah.
But there's curriculum to back it, the Yale curriculum, which gives you steps in each one of those phases. So I think the hardest first step is, looking at the Yale curriculum, deciding where you're gonna start and saying, all right, we're gonna commit to 1 day a week, or we're gonna work on YPAR, we're gonna use the Yale curriculum as our backing, and then we're just gonna get it done. And it's hard to convince someone the first time because it really truly comes alive as you do it, So the way I tell people is rip the Band-Aid, you save yourself on the way, you figure it out on the way down.
Yeah.
But yes, I would say backing it with some curriculum, the Yale curriculum, and then really just being courageous enough to start and, have some courageous youth to work with.
Wendy, I think you had a.
Well, I feel like the hardest way to start is like some teachers, they'll give you like a topic to talk about, and it's not like you don't feel passionate about that topic, and it's like you just do it just for a grade, and you don't put your all into it. When you find a topic that you actually really like and you actually want to like advocate for it, you put your all into it, and it actually comes out good, and you're proud about it. So that's something. Yeah, like I say yeah because I agree, but anyway.
Like I was saying, like I'm sure all of you guys saw how passionate I was about the student showcase. I was like, that was actually our second one, or our first one. It wasn't that well planned. We had like 2 weeks.
No, it was well planned.
No, it was great. It was great.
We saw it could be better. Like we knew it could be better.
But we knew where to start and how.
Yeah, we had 2 weeks of planning.
Longer involvement. They actually, they're not saying the truth. They, after the first student showcase, they literally sat me down and like had an intervention. Wait, Dr. Cox, you're Central Office Administrator. We have some concerns about the student showcase, and we want to make it better. So these are our plans, and these are what we want to do next year to make it better. So as they emulated, they cared about this stuff, and they really took control, and that's the power in this work.
The first year is always the roughest year, but we all know that. So it's getting that, like she said, getting them to, it's a buy-in in a way. But it's not a buy-in on your vision, it's a buy-in on their vision. But it's just trying to figure out what their vision is.
One of the things we're doing this year is we're creating a series of short videos that will hopefully give teachers more of a visual depiction of what does it look like? What does it look like when you're picking a topic? What does it look like when you're learning to conduct research? So that's coming. Yes?
So this speaks to teacher buy-in, I guess, but I'm assuming that the original teachers who started this project, those of you who are in the room today, there was already that inherent buy-in, like that intrinsic, I believe in this, I'm passionate about this. What about other teachers in your building or in your district that maybe at first were hesitant? Have you seen a shift in their willingness to engage with this or employ this? And if so, like what is contributing to that beyond?
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I can talk about that. Sure, I'll take the time. No, I'm just kidding. I think when I first started, it was just me. And I've gotten more and more teachers to assist me in the projects. I've gotten more and more teachers throughout the district that are interested in starting these projects. So it's more of what I usually hear from people is once they actually see the student showcase at the end. We have a big Rutgers Day, and any teachers that attend that and they see what the final project looks like, the buy-in is almost instantaneous for a lot of them. And then again, as Tristan says, it's, we're still kind of all navigating this to some degree that, like, when your first year, you have to use like the Yale curriculum to really kind of guide you and help focus you, and you don't know which direction you're going to go in because it's alive. Every day you don't know what's going to happen next. You have to kind of just wait for it, and you can't anticipate too much. But yeah, usually once everybody starts to see how successful it is and the changes in the students that are in the programs, then we get a lot more buy-in.
It also really helped, I mean, the Laura Wooten's law in New Jersey, which mandates civic education, kind of created a little spark of interest, I think, in the social studies community in New Jersey around civics. And so there are a lot of social studies supervisors now who are thinking about how to really reinvigorate what they do around civics. And so working with not just teachers directly, but also with supervisors and other folks in the district is very helpful too.
And then just one more quick note on that, using teachers who've already gone through the process, right? It's one thing to come from myself as the central office, like you have to do this YPAR project, but using someone who's a professional that has gone through it, that feels confident, I feel gives confidence to the other teachers.
Okay. Can I click on it? I don't know. Well, thank you. I don't want to hold people past the time, but we'll all be here if anybody wants to stay and ask questions. Thank you all very much.
Happy birthday, Jack.
Happy birthday! Well, there it is.
There we go.
Kristen.
Talking about the Yelp. No, I just,
Yes. Yes. Okay, see you later. Where'd it go? Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much.
Hold on 1 second. I'm sorry. I don't want to leave it in where it is now.
Go to Hiroshima. Y'all ever had a yeah, she's retired, but if you email her, she's not really retired.
Yeah.
I know. Oh my God, I have to see. When they come back over and over and over, you'll show their passion. Yes. Oh my God. Well, they're amazing. Congratulations, y'all are pretty amazing. Sorry, I would never give up this show. I want my little exit ticket like radiation.
So you're gonna be my discussion tomorrow?
Yeah, I have that too.
Right. Do you want me to send you it? I have a PowerPoint.
I have no doubt this is all about the
Yeah. Sure.
Because, you know, usually I get upset. Like I'm not waiting my PowerPoint or someone says something that's not supposed to happen. I'm like, my PowerPoint says that this is supposed to happen. So listen, I spent hours on this damn thing. You need to stay with me. So I think teachers are just like, what do you what's going on here?
You want to put, can you read it?
And I'm sure personality-wise, like, when you think about who becomes an accountant, who becomes an engineer, who becomes a teacher. No, exactly. But I did learn, I mean,
yeah, sure. I love that.
I learned.
Well, and it makes sense for the international.
Give it up. So remember Gerald laughed, like Gerald, we go A, B, C, and tomorrow I want to go F, G, L first. I was like, Gerald, right? Wrong with you, Gerald? The alphabet has a sequence to it, not for Gerald. Yeah, so yeah, but I learned early on to give it up. Yes.
Oh, yeah, those are amazing comments.
Well, this book is pretty amazing. Congratulations, you must be so proud. And this is like absolute transportation of teachers and administrators, and the kids, of course, are phenomenal.
Well, you know, it's like,
I mean, yeah, right. Yeah. You gotta get this show on the road because, but it is about getting teachers to let it go.
We need to get you on camera and have you make.
And by the way, I do think it all stems from relationships. Because, handing over all of this really has to do with, regard and reciprocity and all that stuff. But, everything about them. Such a plus. Yeah. I could never, at 16, got never heard of it. District support is key. I know there'll be lots of good work that comes from that. So are y'all doing this exercise also, or just? Right, so that's what we're doing at that. So yeah, and I would definitely do it again next year in Boston. Boston. Yeah. We gotta get this. Well, what a transformative project. For all of us. Do y'all like it not actually wake up and go? Yeah, for sure. I can wake up at night. Yeah. But that's not what's happening. What's happening. Yeah. Wake up. Right. Okay. I'll wake up. Oh wait. Oh my God. All right.
Dinner? Yeah. 5:30. Yeah. Cynthia and I were gonna just go grab a drink before.
I know. I want to just go back and go get that drink. Everyone must need drinks. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Genuine. I'm always so impressed. And then oh, thank you. This conference is actually the conference. Yeah. Yeah. I should have been baptized. Yeah, I saw your face in the back. Yeah, you So, men and know our trend tonight. Get to know each other more. There you go. You had a relationship with it. Okay, so you just have to keep going.
I'm gonna get a drink with Cynthia and I will meet you all at the distillery.
Yes. Are they really?
I'm told it's in walking distance, so we'll figure it out. You just enjoy yourself. Oh, that's where my gloves are. I found my gloves. Both of them? Yep, there they are. Right there.